Thank you everyone for joining me for this session of PeopleTools Tips and Techniques. My name is Jim Marion. I've been in the PeopleTools community for roughly 2 decades. You may have read some of our books, attended one of our conference sessions, or perhaps read our blog posts or seen our YouTube channel. And be sure to subscribe and check out our free resources. Now at JSM Pros, we offer PeopleTools training classes in live virtual and on-demand recorded formats. You can find a list of our upcoming live and recorded classes on our website. Now, we write our own material and teach development topics such as Fluid, REST, JSON, Approval Workflow Engine, Drop Zones, Event Mapping, application classes, as well as all of the basics such as PeopleSoft Test Framework, Query, PeopleTools, PeopleCode, App Engine, and so on. Now today, I want to talk to you about configuration alternatives to customizations. Features such as Event Mapping, Drop Zones, Page Field Configurator, and App Engine plugins. Now these are fantastic new features that we should use. Oracle created these features to reduce the cost of PeopleSoft maintenance. But here's the question. Do they? You see, the ultimate goal is to give us the cloud, always current experience with a perpetual license. But do these features really simplify upgrades? I mean, yes, of course they do. But what role do they play? Let's quickly review the developer's role in maintenance. So step 1 is to run compare reports to identify customizations. And step 2 is to analyze and evaluate. For each customization, is it still relevant? Basically, do we keep it or drop it? And if we decide to keep the customization, we move on to step 3, which is retrofit. We analyze and review the old customization and then change it to fit Oracle's new code. Sometimes this is as simple as just copy and then paste into the new code. And sometimes our code requires a bit of rework. Of those 3 steps, what does a configuration tool such as Event Mapping eliminate? It's the copy-paste step. If reapplying the customization is as simple as copy-paste, then Event Mapping handles it for us. I mean, one way to think of Event Mapping is as automatic copy-paste. Rather than us copying and pasting, Event Mapping injects our code at runtime, keeping that design time code unchanged. What about the other two steps? You, the compare and the report. So we still generate those compare reports, don't we? They just don't show any changes. And I mean, that's the point, isn't it? Right? No compare means we're done. No compare, no analysis, no retrofit. And here's where I see the problem. See step 1, the compare report. It identifies step 2, what requires analysis. Without step 1, we don't have a step 2. But we still have to analyze, don't we? We just don't know what to analyze. And why are we analyzing again? To see if our customization is still relevant, and if so, identify any changes necessary. So here's the thing. Without a compare report, how do we know what to analyze? So let's build out an example. Now at JSM Pros, we teach a 3-step process for event mapping. So let's build out an event mapping example. So in those 3 steps, by the way, they are analyze, code, and configure. So let's start with analyze. Let's apply those steps to an example. How about, let's go with direct deposit. So let's see, that's going to be under employee self-service, payroll, and then direct deposit. Now I'm using an HCM PUM 38 here. Okay, great. So I see my direct deposit here. And let's say that I want to apply some event mapping. How about the pay statement print option? Now, the pay statement print option here at the bottom asks me as the user, do I want my organization to send me a copy of my pay stub, my pay statement? Today, most organizations, most employees, most people, we receive direct deposit. And we don't get a printed check, and oftentimes we don't receive a printed pay statement either. But rather, most organizations require us to log in online to view our pay statements. So having this print option available is a bit misleading. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to use event mapping to eliminate the pay statement print options. Okay, so we're continuing with analyze here. So in analyze, we want to do a quick J control. We'll grab the page name, and let's find out what's the record name, what's the field name, etc. for the item that we want to hide. I mean, just looking at the design here online, I can see this is a checkbox styled as a switch in Fluid. This might be the label, or it might just be text. But what I'm really looking for is this group box that wraps around it. And what I'm hoping for is the group box is attached to a record and field. So I can just say record.field.visible equals false. So let's inspect. Let's find out. Let's go into Application Designer. I'm going to open the page. And I don't see anything here. But this is Fluid. And one of the things that we find in Fluid is a lot of group boxes. And inside those group boxes, oftentimes we find subpages. Now, not subpages for reuse, subpages because, well, the Fluid solution ran out of room. And so because of all of the layout group boxes. And so they use subpages to provide perhaps a second canvas, sort of a way to zoom in and then start working again in design view. Fluid controls the layout, so layout in design view isn't really that relevant. So let's drill in here to the subpage, and on the subpage, oh, there it is, the pay statement print option. I'm assuming so. It says label print option, so this must be it right here. So let's open its properties, and I see a record name here, so I'm going to copy this record name, and let's open Notepad just so we have a place to hold some text. So this is the record. And you know what, let me make this a little bit bigger for you to view as well. Okay, so we've got our record and we want our field. The visible equals false. Perfect. That's the code we want, right? So the next question is, into which event do we want to map our code? Now, I would think any loading event would work. For example, we have pre-build. No, pre-build's out because this is data related and pre-build is prior to data. Okay, so row init could work. Row init of what level? I would say row init of level 0. This looks like it's level 0. We could confirm that. But probably better would be post-build. We only need to do this once per component, so post-build makes sense. But when it comes to event mapping, I almost always choose page activate. You see, the three-step process, going back to the three-step process again, it is analyze, code, configure. Now, with the analyze step, I want to analyze as little as possible. I need to analyze for feasibility. I need to analyze for implementation. But the more I know about Oracle's code, the more I'm likely to tightly couple my solution to Oracle's code. So I want to, as much as possible, treat Oracle's solution like a black box. Know as little about it as possible. I don't want to know, what's Oracle doing in post-build? Is Oracle going to do something in post-build that would undo my code? Is Oracle going to do something in page activate that's going to undo my change? I'm doing record.field.visible equals false. Do they have code that says record.field.visible equals true? I don't know. I don't want to know. I'm just going to go right to the end, page activate, very last code to execute prior to the user interface being rendered, and my code goes right there. So let's see, this is the code that I want. And since this is event mapping, I don't want to make the change directly to page activate. For example, on this page, view page people code, I don't want to make the code change here. That would be a customization, wouldn't it? And the thing about the customization, it would show on the compare report. But we're not customizing. We want to keep Oracle's code unchanged so that we do a configuration. So at upgrade time, we get those clean compare reports so that it appears that we have no customizations. Did you hear that? Appears that we have no customizations. All right, so I want to create a new application package because that is how you apply event mapping, is through application packages. Rather than putting our code right here in the Oracle delivered code, we're going to put it in an application package. Now, the next question is, what should we name that package? So we've come up with a naming convention. Let's see, let's save this. And we'll go with our site-specific prefix, EIS. And one of the challenges we have with event mapping is we don't really have visibility or insight to know what event mapping is used per component. So what we do is we name our application packages after the component. So I'm going to grab the application package name here. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to grab it from the URL. Generally, you would use J-control, but just in case the URL doesn't match the real component, in this case it does. And then I'm going to suffix this with EVT, just so I know, hey, this is the one for event mapping. And then inside that, because I want to know, okay, what's the structure, what code applies to what objects, I'm going to model the events and the structure of the applicant subpackages to match the objects. So in this case, we're applying to page activate of what page? Let's go ahead and do our J control here, get the page name, and insert a subpackage. And then let's insert our class name. The class name, again, the naming convention I'm using here, this is what we've come up with, what we believe helps us identify our code. Helps us understand the structure of our code with event mapping. You don't have to follow these naming conventions. You can name them whatever you want to. Our convention is to name the class after the event. So in this case, it's page activate. I'll save this and then throw my code in there. Now, what we found is that every event mapping solution follows the exact same template. You're going to have an import statement, then you're going to have a class declaration. In that class declaration, you will have at least one method declaration as well as one method implementation. So we put together a code repository in GitHub. And in the GitHub code repository, our people code templates, you'll find the event mapping template. So I'll just copy this, I'll paste it here, and I put this really nice one-liner in here that says, hey, your code goes here. Your code goes here. So let's do that. Let's grab our code, what we mocked up earlier, and we'll paste that there. Okay, so step 1, event mapping, is analyze. Done. Step 2, code the solution. Done. Okay, step 3 is configure. So online, let's go through the configuration steps. And let's go ahead and do that in a new window. So this is 858. We have this great new window link in 858. And we'll navigate to PeopleTools, Portal, related content service. Step 1, define the related content service. Event mapping uses the related content service, related content framework. And every related content configuration requires a service definition. Now, service definition is just an abstract container around a specific implementation. So your related content could be a URL. In this case, with event mapping, it's always application classes. It could be a PeopleSoft component. Anyway, what the related content framework says is, I don't know how it's implemented. So when a service or when a configuration is using a service, the configuration says, hey, service, get me your data. I don't need to know the details of how you get the data. Just give me your data. So that's what we have to do here. We have to create that container, so to speak, for that abstraction so that the framework knows, okay, how to get the data. So we'll choose add a new value. What should we call this? How about EIS? Isn't that what we're using for our site-specific prefix? EIS, perfect. Okay, EIS. And how about PY, payroll, DD, direct deposit, hide, PRNT. Good. Add. And we need to give a service name. How about DD, hide, print, option. Oh, ran out of characters. The service name actually allows for fewer characters than the ID. Unusual. That's how it is, though, here. So application classes, every event mapping uses application classes. Of course, that's what we just did. We created the application class. So we're on step 3 right now, configure the solution. We'll choose our package, EIS, PYIC, DIRDEP, FL, EVT. Follow the path, the structure through, and we get the DIRDEP, FL, in class name, page activate. Perfect, that's it. A nice Alt-1 will save the service definition for me. And then I can go to manage related content service. Again, event mapping is part of related content. So we can see here across the top, the last tab, event mapping, allows us to map to a content reference. Interesting. Did you know that? Event mapping does not apply to components. Event mapping applies to content references. Actually, is that even true? What is a content reference? Well, generally speaking, if we're talking about PeopleSoft content, it's usually a menu component combination. So event mapping actually doesn't even apply to content references. It applies to menu component combinations. How do we know that? Well, if you have a component interface, and this is a common question, does event mapping trigger for component interfaces? And the answer is yes, if you set the menu. See, in your component interface properties, you have a component name, and you have the option of setting a menu. You're not prompted for it by default, but you should. If you want to use event mapping, you will open the component interface, you'll go to the properties, and you'll add a menu. Which menu? The same one that's used with the content reference that we're going to select here. That's how you would apply event mapping. Okay, so right here I'm going to choose map application classes to component events, and I am going to map to direct deposit, but I just realized I have a problem. Do you know the path to the content reference or direct deposit? You see, in Classic, it's simple. In Classic, we just use the navigator because pretty much every component you and I want to visit, they want to map to. The path is right here. But we launched this off of a home page. It started on employee self-service, then payroll, and then direct deposit. Now, where does this live in the portal registry? I don't know. How do we find out? That's a good question. Okay, so fortunately, there's a new tool for us. It's part of Enterprise Components. I'm going to do J-Control here to get the name of the component. And that new tool, the one that I'm going to share with you in just a second, will give us the path to a component. So in a new window, I'll navigate to, and by the way, this is one of my favorite features. It is not technically PeopleTools, is it? It's part of Enterprise Components. It's one of my favorite Enterprise Components. Find object navigation. Component name. Search. And it says, aha, look here. So it exists under Fluid Page Employee Self-Service Direct Deposit, okay, and P&A Fluid Components Direct Deposit. Now, all we need is a menu component combination. So what we need is a content reference that matches the same menu component that we're interested in. We can figure that out. I mean, over here, back on J-Control again, we see the menu and we see the component. Now, I see there are 2 content references here. Actually, there are 3. But this third one, it's a nav collection. It doesn't count. You know what it is really? It's a content reference and link, so it doesn't count. It has to be one of these two. So if we really wanted to narrow this down, what we do is we'd go into the portal registry, PeopleTools portal structure and content, and we would look at both of these, and we'd see which one uses the same menu and same component as this navigation. Now, you cannot have two content references with the exact same menu and component, can you? No. When you try to save, you'll get an error message that says this content reference is not unique. And you'll look up at the name and you'll say, yes, it is. And PeopleSoft will say, no, it is not unique by menu component combination. Basically, it's not a unique target. It's not a unique URL. That's what the portal registry is saying. Now, can we trick that? Absolutely. The way that we trick it is with additional parameters, like perhaps, I don't know, something like tile equals Y. Yeah, interesting. That's exactly what PeopleSoft has done here. We have two content references that point to the exact same menu and component. One of them has additional attributes, tile equals Y, additional parameters, tile equals Y. So irrelevant. Either one of these will get you to the exact same menu component combination. You can use either one of these. I've tried it. I go with this one. It's the oldest one. This has come in later versions of the HCM PUM image as PeopleSoft has moved more towards a dashboard-centric user experience and less with the sidebar. Interesting, with Campus Solutions, pretty much all of the fluid self-service pages are master detail with a left-hand sidebar with links, sort of like what you might call the student work center for each of those. HR did the same thing in the beginning, but HR has been moving more towards a dashboard-centric approach, launching everything from tiles. I'm not saying that's better. I'm just saying that's what they're doing. So let's finish up our related content configuration here for event mapping. So I'm going to check the box, include hidden content references, and then go to self-service, P&A Fluid Components, Payroll North America, direct deposit. And I'm going to find my page level event mapping, and I'm going to select my page. It is PYIC DIRDEP FL. Interesting. You notice it doesn't show us the subpage. We are actually mapping to this here, which is on a subpage. So question is, why doesn't event mapping show subpages? Actually, that's a trick question. Event mapping doesn't show subpages because subpages don't have events. Main pages have page activate, subpages do not. Okay, so let's go back to our event mapping configuration. PYIC DIRDEP FL is the top level page. Let's select our service. It is EIS. Perfect. And what sequence do we want? Post or pre-processing? Let's go with post, so it's the last thing to trigger. Now, I know I've gone through a relatively quick example here, giving you an idea of what's possible with event mapping. Have not explained in detail. We do have a full one-day class covering event mapping in great detail, as well as coming up here very shortly, we have the entire configuration suite, drop zones, event mapping, page and field configurator, App Engine plugins, related content, work centers, dashboards, activity guides, all of that in what we call a configure, don't customize course, covering all of those new Delta features around configuration. We have that class coming up as well. You can find that on our website. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And then let's reload. And what we're hoping for is we want to see the print options disappear. Awesome. Okay, perfect, right? Now, if we were to do a compare report right now, let's see, I'm on PUM 38. Let's say PUM 39 is out. And we want to do a compare report. We want to get current. And so we compare and we look at page activate on one, page activate on the other. And we might say change, but no asterisks, right? Meaning it's all Oracle changes, which is perfect because it means that we can just, slam that into production with no issues, no analysis, no changes. And if anything's wrong, we can just file a My Oracle support ticket, right? Not quite. You see, my code record.field.visible equals false refers to a record and field in the component buffer. What if Oracle removes that record or field from the component buffer? Let's look at that code again because it says PYIC work 2, doesn't it? Work 2, what does that mean? That means it's the second iteration, I think. What about the third iteration? What if Oracle changes this? Then my code fails. You know when it fails? At runtime. Where's the compare report? Where is the analysis? We still need to analyze every single one of our configurations. But we don't know what to analyze unless we are keeping track of all of that. I don't even know if that's practical. So here's the alternative we've come up with. You see, what we have is a configuration here, and that's fantastic. You should be using configuration as much as possible. But we still have to analyze. No retrofit, we still need to analyze. What we need is a way to find out what needs analysis. So what we've come up with is regression testing. I have a configuration here, and I want to know after upgrade, does my configuration still work? Odds are actually pretty high it will, because we're looking at a page that's probably fairly stable. But how do we confirm that? So what we've decided to do is we use PTF, PeopleSoft Test Framework. So every time I have a configuration, I also record a test. So let's do that. So I'm looking at the direct deposit here, and I want to know, is this still hidden? Well, how would I record that? I think the easiest way to record that is to turn it off first. Let's turn off the event mapping. So let's find it in the list. Let's disable it, save, and oh, I hate it when it does that. Once you've applied something and then tested it, you have to reload event mapping. And then we'll go to event mapping. Let's find it again. It is self-service, edit. Make sure you click the edit link, not the hyperlink, or it'll drill you to it. We'll disable, we'll save. And now the paste statement print option group box should be back. So let's now go into PTF and let's record a test. So I'm going to create a test and we'll open the recorder. We'll hook the browser. We'll log in, and I'm going to cheat here a little bit. See, in our PTF class, our 2-day PTF class, we go into great detail about what to record, when to record, where to start recording, and how to record navigation. This one's a little bit interesting because it's we're going to be using tiles. And so in our PTF class, we share with you what's the best way to record navigation through Fluid. PTF is fantastic at recognizing the standard classic navigation when you land on a search page. Fluid, you almost never land on a search page. So Fluid navigation is slightly different. But here, I'm going to do this. I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm not going to start recording until I'm ready to click on the direct deposit payroll tile. And then what I'll do is I'll just manually update the script. One of the other tricks that we show you to make your tests more efficient when in our PTF class. So I'll go ahead and press the record button, and then I'll launch direct deposit. Wait for it. That is one of the tips I'll share with you here. You want to be patient with PTF. But you'll notice here, it just recorded a div click. What does that mean? It means that it saw me click on a tile. And PTF, some people have complained PTF is just too literal. It's true. PTF is very literal. I clicked on a tile, and it recorded that I clicked on that tile. That's not what I want. I want a navigation step. So what we'll do is when the test is done, we'll just manually update that one. Keep it simple. Okay, so here's what we want to test right here. Let's do a verify. Verify that this group box contains the word print option. That's a little weird, isn't it? Because that's not real life. In real life, what we want to actually test is that it's not there. Stay with me. We're going to start here with the verify, and then we'll just go back and edit our script, and we'll do an exist versus not exist. So stop. We're done. I'll close the recorder, and then let's see and let me zoom in here for you so that you can see that. So browser start login, browser frame set, div click. Aha, that's the one. So let's change that to a page prompt. And then we want our menu component and market. And we can grab that from our browser. We'll cheat again, and we'll use the URL, menu component market. I say cheating because if we were using an activity guide or navigation collection, then the URL at the top would not match. And then let's go to our parameters, and we'll go with content. Now, this is another thing we talk about in our Fluid class is that in our PTF class is all URLs in Fluid are content, not Portal. So if you were to use Portal, your script would actually take longer because it would do a redirect back to the content. and we want to be in update mode. And instead of print option, let's go with exist, which is a reserved word keyword for a PTF test. And let's give this a test or a name. How about EIS? Oh, what is this? DD. How about PY? PY for our module. DD, our component. Verify print. OPTN. Okay, perfect. And let's go ahead and run it just to make sure, hey, it works. Even before we hide it and then confirm the non-exist, let's make sure this one works. And like I say, with PTF, you do have to be a little bit patient. We'll get logged in here, and next thing right away, it's going to go right into direct deposit because we did that. And then we did that page.go too. Now it's verifying the print option there. And well, it didn't fail. So that's actually considered a success here. If we wanted to print out a success, and I do, I'm going to use log pass. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to event mapping, and I'm going to hide that item. So online in our event mapping, oh, we visited the page a few times, haven't we? Let's reload the event mapping configuration. And that is self-service, edit, and find our mapping, enable. And let's save. And let's run the test again. This time it should fail because it's no longer there. We're testing for an exist, but it doesn't exist anymore, does it? Okay, let's wait for it. It's almost there. It's going to go right to direct deposit, bypassing all navigation, because at this point, we don't care about the navigation. And perfect. I saw it said it's taking a screenshot because it didn't find it. So here's what we'll do. We'll go back and fix our test now. So not exist. What I'm doing right here, this is very much TDD, test-driven development. Design a test, record a test, watch it pass, watch it fail, refactor. That's what we're doing here. We're just following standard TDD, test-driven development patterns. Okay, we'll run it again. This time it should pass and we'll be all set. And notice I did that log.pass because otherwise, well, how would we know that it really passed? It just ended with an anticlimactic empty flag. So here's a question while this is running. When should you use event mapping versus page and field configurator? Because everything that I did there, you would think you might be able to do in page and field configurator. I have a quick answer for you. I use page and field configurator whenever I can so that my functional analysts can help maintain the content, even though I know I can write better code that's more understandable, readable for you and I as developers using event mapping. So why didn't I use page and field configurator here? The answer is because you cannot hide group boxes with page and field configurator, and that's what we were doing, was hiding a group box. So when to use event mapping? When you can't use page and field configurator. That's one way. Can you use PTF to test page and field configurator configurations? Absolutely, and you should. See, when a test fails, we get a report that, hey, that test has failed. So what I do now is I have all of my configurations, I have all of my regression tests for my configurations, and then when I run them, any that fail, they fall through, I filter for all that failed. Then I can come back here to each of those tests and say, look at the comments, and look to see what development request does this relate to? What was the enhancement request? Why do we have this in the first place? Now I do the analysis. Now I know what needs to be analyzed. See if it passed? I don't need to analyze it. And that's a key difference. If we had a compare report, you're going to analyze every single customization. Here, I only have to analyze the configurations that fall through automated testing. But what if you haven't implemented PTF? Okay, let's stop right there. Do you really have to implement PTF? I mean, define implement. I'm using PTF, and I can't say that I implemented it. I just ran the silent install and launched it. It's included with PeopleSoft. It's all there. We just have to start using it. Now, at JSM Pros, we believe that PTF is a critical development tool, and we want to help you become proficient. Our next live virtual session is July 12th. And because you're attending EIS, we want to share some additional resources with you. If you register within the next 12 hours, and use the discount code EIS2021, we'll share the recording with you, no extra charge. That's 30 days of access to our PTF recorded material at no extra cost. And now, to make sure you don't miss any announcements or events, be sure to subscribe to our social channels. We regularly blog, post on YouTube, and social media. And now with that, I want to say thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you online for the next one.